Hello!
Yes, I am.
I say, you were that mind reader chappie.
About 20 years now.
How long have you been reading minds?
Yes, in a minute, dear.
Will it be much longer?
That, or that's the wife.
Who was that lady?
A lot of chaps say the same.
Dashed attractive.
As a matter of fact, she can.
Can she read minds as well?
How dare you!
I think you better.
I'm going home.
The Two Ronnies ran for 12 series, and at its height it was getting sort of 16, 17 million viewers.
It was a success right out of the box. I mean, it came out and we topped the ratings that very first week.
When these things are happening to you, I don't think you're ever aware of quite the position you're in or the power you really have.
They both knew what was good material and what was bad material. They were brutal, but then you can't not be brutal and be a big success as they were.
In April 1971, the BBC launched The Two Ronnies. Starring Ronnie Corbett and Ronnie Barker, it was initially produced by Jimmy Gilbert and directed by Terry Hughes. And for 16 years, the cream of British comedy writers were on hand to supply The Two Ronnies with material which was never knowingly unpredictable.
For a series that ran so long, there was very little change because the formula evolved very early on.
Good evening. It's good to be with you again, isn't it, Ronnie?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It started with the news items.
But first,
The news. The search for the man who terrorizes nudist camps with a bacon slicer goes on. Inspector Lemuel Jones had a tip-off this morning, but hopes to be back on duty tomorrow.
And Ronnie did his spokesperson.
Good evening. I want to speak to you tonight about, worms. Good Lord, is that the time?
There'd be a party sketch.
Hello!
hello.
Ronnie Corbett did his sit-down chair.
I bought the kiddies Nigel Lawson.
It's not my fault that he doesn't like the show. Isn't it funny when you know you've said the wrong thing? A gift like mine, who needs talent, I'll tell you.
We did a film item in the middle.
The big song musical number.
And that sort of never changed.
So that is good night from me.
And it's good night from him. Good night.
Good night.
I think they were successful for so long for sheer hard work. There's no substitute for it. I've never known people graft like they did and scripts honed and worked at and sweated on. Every show was their first show. The amount of care and work they devoted to it.
I was just wondering... After you. No, after you. I was just wondering what you do in life. Well, actually, I'm a marketing executive. Are you really? So am I. Well, I never. Isn't that a strange coincidence?
Comedians are notoriously greedy. Well, Barker's not a comedian. He's an actor used to ensemble work. And Corbett, perhaps the only comedian we know who isn't greedy.
Our relationship was like a married couple. We were so close as we worked together that I'm sure that contributed enormously to the success of the show.
Their marriage happened accidentally when the Two Ronnies were thrown together at a London theatre in 1970 during a hitch in an award ceremony. The call went out, "Is there a comedian in the house?"
Ron and I did this, hosted the BAFTA awards from the Palladium, and there was a breakdown, technical breakdown.
We all hung around sitting in the stalls of this theatre that we were in, and I was sitting next to Paul Fox, who then was the controller of BBC One.
And we're reputed to have kept the audience entertained for anything from up to 4 minutes to 17 minutes.
I turned to Paul and I said, how would you like to have Corbett and Barker on your network for the next 3 years?
And that was the start, really, of the move to the BBC.
For years before the Two Ronnies, Corbett and Barker had been well-known faces on British television, with a range of credits as both solo performers and in double acts dating back to the 1950s. Ronnie Barker's background was in theatre as an actor with the Oxford Repertory Company. From there, he joined The Navy Lark, the long-running comedy on BBC Radio. That was where Barker first met producer Jimmy Gilbert in what was a pivotal moment in his career.
I went along to the Playhouse Theatre in London where they were recording it, and I was instantly hooked, and he was booked. And we worked together off and on for the next 20 years, really.
Gilbert got the young Barker back on stage, appearing with Stanley Baxter in On the Brighter Side, then cast him as Jimmy Edwards' son in the BBC sitcom 7 Faces of Jim, where he played opposite June Whitfield's Eth.
Oh, Ron, how much longer have we got to endure this torment?
Only about another 10 minutes, Ed. If I'm not home to tea, Dad will get suspicious, especially as it's pilchards.
Ronnie Corbett's background was very different to that of Barker's. In the 1950s, he was a regular guest in the early years of Crackerjack.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the one.
When not on the Gogglebox, as it was then known, Corbett appeared in Cabaret with Danny LaRue at his West End nightclub. The show was written by Barry Cryer.
They were amazing together. You can imagine the height. Danny in high heels was about 7 feet, and with Ronnie, they were just made as a team. Before the Two Ronnies became a great team, Ronnie was half of a great double act.
To make ends meet, Corbett also worked in a pub where he met Ronnie Barker. Unusually for a couple whose relationship started in a bar, they stayed together for the next 30 years.
I first met Ronnie Corbett at a club called the Buxton Club, where he was serving behind the bar and standing on a box.
I'd met him socially in a kind of very, vague sort of way, so I knew him from that point of view.
Escaping from behind the bar, Corbett was cast in Lionel Bart's latest musical extravaganza. Everybody expected it to be a smash hit.
I was in Twang, which was one of the great musical disasters of the British theatre.
The Robin Hood musical buried many careers under the greenwood tree, but not Corbett's. Perversely, its failure gave him his biggest break.
David Frost rang me up and said, if Twang runs, you won't be able to do this, but in 6 weeks I am starting recording a series called The Frost Report. Twang came off, and I did The Frost Report, and that was a major turning point in my life, really.
Working with David Frost's company, Paradigm, the BBC launched The Frost Report in March 1966. Among its many achievements was bringing Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett into the same comedy team. The material was pretty special too.
I mean, the writers on The Frost Report were legion and wonderful, Barry and Marty Feldman, Eric Idle, Graham Chapman, John Cleese, Michael Palin, Terry Jones, Marty Feldman. Fantastic writers,
One thing that sticks in my mind about the Two Ronnies in those very early days in The Frost Report was, I think, the first thing they ever did, first sketch they ever did together.
Meanwhile, back at the station. Good morning, Super. Morning, wonderful.
And that was the first moment, which still exists, of the Two Ronnies working together.
The Frost Report won the much-coveted Golden Rose of Montreux in 1967. The following year, David Frost and the Paradigm Troupe switched channels to London Weekend.
Some of us were asked to join them as writers, so there was a whole caravan moved across into all sorts of shows. It was just an amazing era.
The move to LWT sparked the busiest time in Barker and Corbett's careers. Proving that they were solo performers and not just part of a comedy team, Corbett starred as Ronnie in his own sitcom, No, That's Me Over Here, written by Barry Cryer, Eric Idle, Graham Chapman, and produced by Marty Feldman. The following year, he returned to his variety roots, introducing song and dance routines and stand-up comedy in the Corbett Follies.
And now, of course, the star of our show, Mr. Ronnie Corbett.
There we are. What an exciting opening, isn't it? All that Braziliana. Lovely.
The Ronnie Barker Playhouse marked the start of his solo TV career. The series gave birth to several long-living characters, including the eccentric Lord Rustless, who reappeared in Hark at Barker alongside Josephine Tewson. She went with him to 6 Dates with Barker, which introduced a character he would revive for his farewell to TV comedy, almost 2 decades later.
So you ain't going to Hong Kong with a man, eh?
Rangoon?
Oh, yeah.
No, I've given me notice. As of this evening, I shall have to find a new position.
Try standing up in a hammock.
In 1969, their services were again requested by the boss, this time for Frost on Sunday. But trouble was brewing. David Frost had fallen out with LWT. So, as the curtain was drawn on their ITV adventure, the Paradigm Caravan was set to steal away once again. The LWT departure coincided with Corbett and Barker's triumphant performance at the BAFTAs, and excited BBC bosses were waiting with a hello, good evening, and welcome back.
Bill Cotton brought me into his office and he said, look, the Ronnies are coming back to the BBC and I'm going to take you off production, all other production, for a year, and it's your job to find material and shows for the two of them.
To do that, Jimmy Gilbert turned to Terry Hughes, whose credits included producing Harry Seacombe, Kenneth Williams and Val Doonican.
I was an enormous fan of the Ronnies. I'd seen them on the Frost Report. I'd seen the stuff they'd done with David at London Weekend, David Frost, and I knew exactly what they were capable of.
Please don't think that I'm trying to get you drunk, because I'm really not.
You sure?
No, absolutely not. I promise I didn't mean that. I really didn't.
I did.
I just meant that I thought you were very attractive. Beautiful.
Fantastic.
And I thought I'd like to take you out for a meal.
Me too.
Because you're friendly and warm and, well, you just have such terrific knockers.
Jimmy Gilbert, who had been invaluable in the first year, he phased himself out quite soon, and I was left totally in control. There was nobody to replace Jimmy Gilbert. It became my show.
I expect by now it'll be panic stations in the control box. Red alert. That's when they wake up the producer.
Michael Palin, Terry Jones wrote a lot for us in the first year, but subsequently were unavailable because of the demands on their time with Python and their own projects. But the cream of the cream was available to us. We wanted them and they wanted to write for us, so it was a very happy situation.
And so to our first contender. Good evening, your name, please.
Good evening.
Your first heat, your chosen subject was answering questions before they were asked. This time, you have chosen to answer the question before last each time. Is that correct?
Charlie Smithers.
And your time starts now. What is paleontology?
Yes, absolutely correct.
What's the name of the directory that lists members of the peerage?
A study of old fossils.
I do remember having sat down and written this sketch that I tore it up.
What is Bernard Manning famous for?
That is the question.
Correct. Who is the present Archbishop of Canterbury?
He is a fat man who tells blue jokes.
Correct. What do people kneel on in church?
The Right Reverend Robert Runcie.
And the following day, because I had no better ideas in me and had to deliver whatever it was I'd agreed to deliver that year, I literally just fished the pieces out of a waste bin and sellotaped them together.
What would you use a ripcord to pull open?
Large flies.
What sort of a person lived in Bedlam?
A parachute.
Correct. What is a jockstrap?
A nutcase.
I learned a great deal at the feet of Messrs. Corbett and Barker, especially from Ronnie Barker in terms of filming. He was a very skillful writer of film pieces and how to do them.
We were aware very early on that Ronnie Barker was pretty creative, his input into how to do things and input on lines often, but we didn't really take in the real writing strength of him until the emergence of the mysterious Gerald Wiley.
People said, why don't you write under your own name? And the true reason was that I wanted sketches to be accepted on their own merit and not just because it was me. You see, if I put by Ronnie Barker, they might say, oh yes, very good, Ronnie, very good, it's very nice. And I think, God, we've got to do this. Well, we can't tell him. But if you say Gerald Wiley, someone unknown, they can just judge it on its merits.
Careful to make the best of a show whose title carried their names, the Two Ronnies didn't just turn up to read their lines.
Ronnie Corbett used to joke that we had more meetings than we actually rehearsed. He wasn't so fond of meetings. He was very much a part of it. But Ronnie Barker was very meticulous and very precise.
I was very finicky, wanting to get every detail right, which I think sometimes annoyed people. I work with technical people, crews and so forth. Not Ronnie Corbett, of course. We both knew how important it was to get it absolutely as right as we could.
We had so much experience in the live theatre, and we knew what people would enjoy, what they wouldn't enjoy. So our taste and our judgment about what was funny and what we thought was proper and nice and entertaining was easy to come by, and we agreed on a lot of things. So it was simple from the word go, really.
Take the book in the right hand, read what it says on the card.
Christmas time is here again. Mistletoe and holly. I wish you all you wish yourself, and may your day be jolly.
The other side of the card.
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Love, Dennis and Mabel.
Ron finds it easier to not be himself, and I found it easier to be myself or a version of myself.
I remember when we did the first news items, Ronnie Corbett said at the end,
And it's good night from me.
and Ronnie Barker ad-libbed.
And it's good night from him.
What he was essentially saying in that is that Ronnie Corbett is Ronnie Corbett, but I am whoever I'm playing at the moment. At the moment, I'm playing a newscaster. But that saying stuck, and they were saying it 12 years later when the show ended.
Ronnie Barker, in a sort of Peter Sellers-like way, kind of can transform himself almost miraculously into other people. Ronnie Corbett's own twinkly personality shines through in every role he plays.
Ronnie Corbett and Ronnie Barker sort of work because it's a natural affinity. It's not a double act at all, because both of them are being funny at the same time.
F-U-N-E-X. S. VFX. F-U-N-E-M. VFN10EM.
Making 8 shows a year gave the Ronnies time to develop solo sitcom careers. Barry Cryer and Graham Chapman wrote Now Look Here for Corbett in 1973 and followed it with The Prince of Denmark, where Ronnie called on his experience behind the bar of the Buxton to run a pub.
Now, the lift's electric.
Yes.
Now, would you like to see that?
That'd be very nice, yes.
Yes, well, stay there and I'll show you.
Yes, right.
Right, it is here.
Uh-huh. Oh, my goodness, I didn't think you were... Oh, I didn't... Oh, good heavens. Oh! Hello.
Ronnie Barker's choice of roles eventually made him a sitcom legend. First, he revisited Lord Rustless in His Lordship Entertains, again with Joe Chewson. But his next show, Idle at Work, never got into gear, despite having Graham Chapman as writer and Jimmy Gilbert producing. But Barker struck gold in 1973 with his series of half-hour pilots, 7 of 1. Out of these came his 2 most memorable characters, Fletcher in Porridge and Arkwright in Open All Hours. Yet wherever their solo ventures led, the 2 Ronnies always returned to each other and continued to hit it off.
My name's... What is this? What is it?
I'm sorry. It's something I just can't control. If I were you, I'd just move away.
Well, I mean...
I think one of the strengths about the 2 of them together was the fact that one had come up the legitimate, as we call it, straight acting side, and little Ronnie had come up the variety side, because it covered then all possibilities, all situations.
There we are!
The 2 Ronnies enjoyed unbroken success throughout the 1970s, but Terry Hughes was in demand and crossed the Atlantic in 1980, where he fell into the embrace of 4 old broads in Miami, then 4 aliens on campus, and most recently the 6 bestest friends in New York. Terry Hughes' replacement in London was Michael Hurl, whose experience said if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
It was so well established. I really had to sit back and let them do what they'd been doing so successfully for a long time. I mean, what you mustn't do is go into a show like that and say, well, I want changes here and changes there, because they'd proved that it was working well, and I'd be crazy to do anything else.
Despite the personnel changes, the 2 Ronnies remained big box office and were being saluted by their peers.
The show business personalities of 1980 are the 2 Ronnies, Corbett and Barker.
But if the Two Ronnies weren't changing, the comedy landscape around them was.
Good evening. It's wonderful to be with you again, isn't it, Ronnie?
No, it's a bleeding pain in the arse, frankly. But in a packed programme tonight, you'll be reassured to know we'll be using exactly the same sort of material
as we've used for the last 20 years.
I remember there was quite a cruel sort of send-up of us done by Griff Rhys-Jones and Mel Smith.
I shall be talking incredibly quickly, making thousands of thoonerisms and dressing up in women's clothing.
And I shan't be getting any laughs because he writes most of the scripts and makes sure I get all the crappy bits.
I loved it. I thought it was hilarious, that send-up.
Later in the show, I shall be implying through smutty innuendo
that I have a very small part
and I have an enormous penis.
I remember saying to Ronnie Corbett, "Oh, come on, it's just a bit of fun. It's not doing us any harm." I think they got a bit serious about it.
We weren't going to try and keep up with them or be, phonily trendy, or we just did our thing and that was it.
But was their thing getting a bit cheesy by now?
A lot of the stuff wasn't as innocent as people might make out and was sexist and was end of the pier, vaudeville, seaside postcard, yes, but actually, weren't we a bit more mature than that now?
Ironically, it was in this changing landscape that Ronnie Corbett enjoyed his greatest solo success. In Sorry, Corbett, the all-round entertainer, emerged from Barker's shadow to become Corbett, the accomplished comic actor.
Jennifer and I are getting married the day after tomorrow.
That's as maybe.
That's as will be, Mother. I have to put it in the strongest possible terms. Jennifer is my wife-to-be.
Fiddlesticks.
Not fiddlesticks at all. Isaiah 2:26. And in his season, a man shall leave his mother and cleave to his wife. I've got a lot of cleaving to do.
With his years with the Two Ronnies, he's a great words man. He wants the words right on the page, and when they're right, he will defend them to the death. So any actor who came on Sorry got the shock of their lives when they said, "Oh, could that be a bit different?" No, Ronnie would say, "We're saying that and you're saying that, and get on with it." So you couldn't ask for a better star. A writer couldn't ask for a better star.
In 1986, the Two Ronnies were invited to Australia for a TV series catering to the unique tastes of a down-under audience. But the trip signalled the beginning of the end.
Where's Rooney?
Rooney's gone a bit strange. I reckon the loneliness has got to him.
Well, he should never join the Rolf Harris fan club.
Ron was worried about blood pressure, and I think in Australia in the swimming pool, when we were all out there for the year, he'd had a bit of a funny little turn that worried him.
One night he said to me, "I don't think I can do this much longer." He said, "We'll do one more series in the UK, one more Two Ronnies series, and I'm going to pack it in."
People have been going, younger than us, Eric and Tommy Cooper, and so if you don't feel right, you're not feeling strong and vigorous, don't kill yourself with work.
I thought, I don't want that. Quit while you're ahead, I thought. And I spoke to Ronnie C, and he was marvellous about it.
He said, "I'll just feel out to tell you, Ron, that I've decided that after the next series, that's we're in the middle of one series, after next year's series and the Christmas show, I'm going to retire."
And that's just what he did. After Christmas night with the Two Ronnies went out in 1987, and nobody was any the wiser.
Good evening. It's wonderful to be with you for this special Christmas show, isn't it, Ronnie?
Indeed it is. But first, the news. Latest statistics show that 90% of all British women like shaking Stevens. On the other hand, 90% of all British men think he's old enough to shake himself.
So the audience weren't told, the crew weren't told, nothing special happened. We just got changed, said goodbye, and went off and had our curry. That was the way it all came to an end, No gala celebrations or anything like that. Funny, really.
Following his low-key departure from the Two Ronnies, Barker retired the next year after revisiting his 1971 character Clarence with his original leading lady.
He rang me up and said, "Well, I've written 6 episodes to go with this first one, and I've always thought it would make a good series, and I'd like to do it, and it's just you and me and the odd other person."
You going to Hong Kong too, Noreen?
Rangoon? No, I told you I've had my notice. As of this evening, I shall have to find a new position.
Oh, try standing up in hammock.
And then he said, "Just one thing I'd like to tell you. At the end of it, I'm going to retire." I thought, you can't mean what? I said, retire from what, you see? He said, from the business.
I've never regretted it. I did everything I wanted to do. I had no ambitions left. And I'd been, so lucky and so enjoyed myself so much. And I thought, that's it.
Well, that wasn't quite it. Barker was tempted out of retirement for straight acting roles. In 2002, he played Inches, Churchill's butler in The Gathering Storm, and the following year starred alongside Maggie Smith in My House in Umbria. But what of the song and dance man?
Because, of course, we'd set up this natural independence as well, I wasn't so, stranded. Didn't feel stranded. Wasn't stranded.
Maybe not stranded, but being stuck in the middle with Brucey late on Boxing Night 1988 wasn't the most auspicious start, despite the BBC's best efforts to create a new double act.
Well, before we start, Bruce, can I wish you all the best of luck for the show?
Well, thank you, Ron, thank you.
With your comeback.
What do you mean? I'm not making a comeback.
Well, you mustn't lose confidence. Come back to the BBC. BBC
Oh,
One,
I see.
number one channel.
Oh, yes. Well,
you mustn't worry. You're among friends.
Well, that's
and
nice.
The audience loves you. And one or two of them remember you.
Bruce and Ronnie went no further, and Corbett's TV appearances became fewer as the 1990s progressed. He featured on the big screen alongside old Frost Report colleagues John Cleese and Michael Palin in the movie Fierce Creatures, before being given an unlikely new lease of television life.
And on that note, it's time to welcome once again my very special guest, Ronnie Corbett!
Ben was out there doing his hammer with his cervical smear material, very dodgy areas by my standards that he goes into, getting roars of laughter, and I come on sort of simpering away in the chair going,
As I'm sure you're aware, the government has said that even 5-year-olds must do some work after school. Like so many of Tony Blair's ideas, he got it from Mrs. Thatcher. Only she thought they'd work down the mines.
After an 18-year absence, the two Ronnies are back. Fittingly, the idea of reuniting them came from another night at the BAFTAs.
They showed his BAFTA, got very big figures, and they said that Ronnie was game to come back and do a selection of stuff that we'd done in the past.
The sketchbook gave the two Ronnies a chance to introduce some of their old sketches to a new audience.
When Ron and I did it, we were entertaining mums and dads and granddads, and children sat down and watched the show all together. There were everybody watched it in the family, so it was across the board, really.
I mean, it's wonderful to be with you again, isn't it, Ronnie?
Absolutely. And before we begin, let us just reassure you that we are, in fact, the Two Ronnies. Not, as you may have thought, merely Ant and Dec after a heavy night out.
It's a wonderful job. I've been so lucky to get a job, where the only thing you have to do in your career is to make people laugh. I mean, it's the best job in the world.
Camden Town, my Camden Town, you are home to me.
The Two Ronnies sketchbook is on Friday at 8:30.